Hi, I'm Keith Ghostland.
I'm Ann Charles.
I'm Linda Quinlan. Welcome to All Things LGBTQ. Today is Tuesday, October 25th. We are taping in Montpelier, which we recognize as unceded Indigenous land. So Keith, would you like to start?
You almost forgot where we were, didn't you?
I did.
Well, and also, can I preview the interview show for next week?
Well,
Go
ahead.
All right, tune in, same time, different place, next Saturday, and we have a great lineup for you. We have a beekeeper, a novelist, and a political candidate.
So
whose
stay
names
tuned.
are Ange Rowell, Taylor Small, and Kay Ecker. So tune in. Should be a good show.
Yes. Keith.
Now we're ready for
Now
you.
I don't know what to do anymore. This week's trivia question. Front page, Out in the Mountains, September 1988. They were reporting on a major change that had happened at that year's Pride Festival. What might it have been? And then, October 13th, which was just after we taped our last show, was Black Women's Equal Pay Day. And I wanted to highlight this because the statistic they put out is that a black woman earns only 62 cents for every dollar that a white male earns.
Mm.
So there is still incredible disparity there. So some events. Pride Vermont is happening September 8th through the 13th. If you go on the Pride Center's website, what you'll find it says more information coming. And it looks as though they're doing a combination of some in-person events such as bike rides, picnics in large venues, and some virtual events, such as one that might be happening on Thursday, September 10th, when they will be showing the documentary All We've Got about the decreasing space for LGBTQ plus women in the U.S., and there might be following that a virtual roundtable discussion about creating, sustaining LGBTQ plus women's spaces here in Vermont, and Professor Ann Charles might be one of the people participating. And going on that family theme, don't forget Rainbow Umbrella book discussion group. If you're interested, you might want to contact that Linda Quinlan. Also, on Saturday, September 12th, at Zero Gravity, it's a fundraiser, and it's an in-person event. They're going to be handing out Incredibly Proud Ale, which was the Pride LGBTQ plus brew that they put out last year. They are redoing it. And then on September 13th is the Pride Stream event starting at 5 o'clock. And thus far it says that it's both online and on WCAX.
Huh.
Which, okay. Momentum, Rainbow Umbrella, Coffee and Chat, September 6th, starting at 11 a.m. Rainbow Umbrella, just to put a plug out there, is still meeting with the new chief of police in Montpelier. If you're interested in policing, let's talk about it. Plug again for an interview that might have been done by Professor Ann Charles with Donna Ann McAdams regarding her photo exhibition, which is at the Helen Day Art Center in Stowe through November. And they're asking that people please make reservations to go and see the exhibit. Please be checking people's website for both virtual and in-person events, because organizations are starting to do a combination of both. And then for stories, what I'm going to talk about is public safety released their traffic stop data, and it wasn't as encouraging as we had hoped. The legislature's back. What might we expect? Vermont is involved in a lawsuit about illegal checkpoints. So we'll talk some about that. Canada, their drag race makeover, and I will just do this briefly. They brought in 5 LGBTQ asylum seekers and did the makeover. And the Rainbow group in Canada, Rainbow Railroad, brought in the asylum seekers. And a $10,000 donation was made on behalf of the winner to Rainbow Railroad, who has thus far brought in over 700 LGBTQ plus asylum seekers. Compare that with what we just heard today about the current regime making it more difficult for asylum seekers to come into the U.S.
And do you think that, you know, we could get on that train if Trump is reelected
Well, Rainbow Railroad
as an asylum seeker?
is specifically geared toward Chechnyan.
Well,
asylum
it
seekers,
is
right?
one of. That is one of.
Oh, it's not
but
exclusively.
It's not exclusive. That may have been the origin, but the 5 asylum seekers that were part of the drag makeover were more than just people from Chechnya. They were people from South America, Latin. So it was. And I'm going to talk about HUD and sheltering and action that people should do. And just an acknowledgement that Vermont has filed suit, 2 cases. One, the Attorney General about the post office and stopping what it is they're doing. And the census, where the governor has filed an appeal. And I will talk a little bit more about this because there's an active ploy to try and undercount undocumented. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the primary.
We have a lot on our plate.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have many items also. A transgender Salvadoran woman who fled to Guatemala is murdered. And in this, she was 29. I learned in this story that there is what's called a Northern Triangle that includes Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, and they're particularly deadly for trans people. She was found with several wounds on her body and her face was disfigured. The Guatemalan Migration Institute has not responded to requests for comment. So it's all very deadly in that Northern Triangle. In the Uganda story that I've been reporting on for ages, it seems, Ugandan officials have been summoned before the court over the torture of the LGBT youth, TQ youth. Remember I told you about how they were all arrested in a sham action because they were failing to social distance and they were tortured. And so now the chairman of the town council, who beat members of the group, he's been charged, and also the mayor of the town where it occurred. So, you know, progress. In Japan, where same-sex marriage is not legal, there's an uproar over same-sex couples not being counted in the census as other instead of spouse. And common law heterosexual couples are counted as spouse, and same-sex couples who are not married are counted as other. So LGBT groups in Japan are protesting. After 15 years, Black pride is ever more vital and relevant than ever, and I have a clip I'll show you later in the program. The Taiwan Highway Authority has been slammed because it has a license plate blacklist, and it's very eccentric document, actually. Words that are, the Taiwan License Bureau added a digit in 2012. And so the government decided to add this extra letter and blacklisted 24 letter combinations which couldn't be used because of their perceived controversial nature, including mad, none, sex, sly, bad, gay, ass, bum, bra, cry, cat, pup, ant, and ape. So the inclusion of gay in this list is an obvious slur, but people are wondering why cat and pup and ape can't appear. So it's all being questioned, and some people, the argument is obviously that some people want those letters on their licenses. So it's been more opinion from the public is being collected about this particular issue in Taiwan. I'd also like to mention Turkish censorship. And I have a picture before you now of two lesbians who are parents, and the TV station in Turkey has been fined because they included a series called Extraordinary Pregnancies, and it included this lesbian couple who had what they described as an extraordinary pregnancy, and the Turkish censors are angry. Depicting two women as parents was against society's spiritual values, they say. So fines have been issued. The members of Parliament of the European Commission, they refer Poland to the members of Parliament, the members of the European Parliament refer Poland to the European Commission over the LGBTQ arrests that I reported on last time. 48 people were arrested over, and particularly angry about the detainment of a non-binary person named Margot. So the European Commission is going to pay attention to that. And in an inclusive mood, here's good news. Reserved seats for transgender people will occur on Calcutta buses. And this is sort of interesting.
Reserved seats?
Yes, because in the person, a 23-year-old activist behind the idea is Shobhan Mukherjee. He's nicknamed Calcutta's Pad Man 2 years ago because he set up sanitary napkin vending boxes in public toilets. He's also been instrumental in installing transgender toilets in the city. So he's really been a mover and shaker in Calcutta.
Isn't that our friend's last name?
Yes, yes. The seats are be calling Tried Hara, and they'll have stickers and signs pasted over them indicating that they're meant for transgender people. He is responding to some harassment that one of his friends, a trans friend, received on a Calcutta bus. This person was Ranija Sinha, and, who was asked to get off the bus, and he was just trying to take a seat. So his expulsion from the bus has brought this movement and this gesture toward trans people in Calcutta. More headlines. The U.S. is concerned about neo-Nazi groups after the Hungarian rainbow flags were torn down. And Hungarian rainbow flags were torn down from the embassy. And this follows since Orban, the vicious homophobe who's in office there, has made all these anti-gay speeches. So now rainbow flags are being torn down, and the embassies are protesting the increased anti-LGBT harassment in Hungary. A Chinese LGBT group, Shanghai Pride, halts the parade, and this is very sad. They've been doing it, I believe, since...
a long time.
Yes, and they feared for their safety. You know, China has also been cracking down in general, as we know if we've been following the news in Hong Kong. freedom of expression is a fundamental right, but it's the longest, one of China's longest running gay pride groups. It had been, homosexuality is legal. Until 2001, it had been classified as a mental disorder. But so they are shutting down, and it began in 2009, and it's been very active. It even had a festival in June in which over 100 people participated, but they were getting death threats, so they're throwing in the towel. Queensland in Australia becomes the first Australian state to outlaw gay conversion therapy. And so people who practice conversion therapy, actually healthcare providers, can face 18 months in jail. The problem is, it's part of a growing trend of banning conversion therapy. In July, Israel took the first step toward an outright ban. Several countries have banned it, including Malta, Brazil, and Germany. The problem with this rule is that it bans it in the public practice for public health practitioners. And as we know, some of the most prominent, active, widespread conversion therapists are in faith communities. Mm-hmm. And so the law doesn't cover that. Still, it's progress. Jamaica is terrible news there. An overwhelming majority of Jamaicans were polled, and they say that the law making sex between two men punishable should not be changed. The statistics are really discouraging. The Offenses Against the Person Act, Section 26, makes what they call buggery punishable across the board with a penalty of imprisonment of up to 10 years with hard labor. 93% of Jamaican respondents to this poll said that they wouldn't want the law changed. So wow. The conclusion of this article is that the results are a reminder of the strong traditionalist views held by Jamaicans about homosexuality. I'd revise that and say the strong, perniciously homophobic views.
Don't go there.
I know. In the old travel days,
go there all the time.
Okay, but I have two more positive stories, two positive stories in counterpoint to the last one. This involves the Pope, and I don't often report on him, but in this case, he's behaved benevolently. I'd like to show you a picture now of Sister Monica Astorga, who's a Carmelite, and she's ministered to trans women in Argentina for 14 years. And the Pope just sent her a letter of support and signed it Francisco because they knew each other when he was Bishop of Buenos Aires in Argentina. And he sent her supportive messages before, and he's just sent another one. And in one of his letters, he says, "Say hi to your girls. I'm sending love to you and your girls." He likens transgender people to lepers, which if I were a transgender person, I don't know that I'd be pleased about. But there's the Pope for you. And finally, there's a new Nigerian film that I'm very excited to tell you about. And let me just show you a picture right now of the producer of the film, who is posing. The film is called Ife, which is Yoruba for love. And in the picture before you, this is Pamela Adi, who's in the center. She's the producer. And two members of the cast that you'll see in the clip I show later, Uzomaka Anmui and Cindy Armada. They're both from Lagos. The three of them are posing there. The film is going to be very exciting once it's released, and we'll talk more about that when we get to my segments. Linda.
Well, thank you, Ann.
My great pleasure.
We have in Kansas Commission adds LGBTQ non-discrimination clause to their, and then the commission that enforces Kansas non-discrimination laws will begin hearings from people. Log Cabin Republican chair says that LGBTQ Americans belong in the Republican Party.
Is he kidding?
I know, I have more on that. Trump administration erases LGBTQ people from foreign aid policy. Trump pardons lesbian suffragette Susan B. Anthony. I don't think she would like that.
There was a little pushback.
Yeah. Right wing launches a disgusting attack on pedophile gay lawmaker over equality legislation. Randy Rainbow apologizes for making racist and having racist and transphobic tweets. Dozens of racist and anti-Semitic tweets surfaced from statements he made years ago.
Oh, God.
Well, I know. Right-wing pundits are now saying that Michelle Obama is a trans woman. I know. More on that story later. In Newark, authorities are now wondering if the death of a transgender woman, Ashley Moores, was actually a suicide. They are renewing the case that was originally ruled as a suicide. Pride banner incites furor in Utah town, and they are now banned. Good Kisser might be a sexy lesbian movie to spice up what remains of your summer.
Whoa.
Baseball broadcaster uses gay slur and botches his apology.
He should be, he's not going to announce, but he's not fired, right?
No, I think he's suspended, but they're probably looking into it. The Washington Post published a takedown of Richard Grenell's insane claim that Trump is pro-gay. So we'll have more on that.
It's not even pro-gay. Didn't he say he was the most pro-gay president ever?
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that.
All right, sorry.
Mass Democratic Party is investigating the motivation for the salacious charges against a gay mayor from Holyoke who is running for Congress. So we'll have more about that. Lingua Franco will come to Netflix next week. It's a groundbreaking film by a transgender Filipina named Isabella Sandoval and promises an experience. Is that the same one?
Is it lingua franca?
Lingua. Is that how you
Lingua
pronounce it?
franca.
Yeah.
It means, language of the people.
Language. Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
And promises an experience that will uplift the audience's expectations. So we'll look for that. Human Rights Campaign congratulates two Florida LGBTQ candidates on their primary victories. These two victories include Chevin Jones and Representative Michelle Raynor. Florida is one of only 29 states in the country that lacks explicit state-level protections for LGBTQ people, and the total number of LGBTQ people in the state is 770,000. So, LGBTQ people make history at 2020 Democratic National Convention. There were 3 openly LGBTQ people who together will make the first being opened as LGBTQ to speak as keynote speakers.
Yep.
So.
And if I may.
I'm going to go. More.
Okay.
All right, be quiet over there.
I'm irrepressible
These are
tonight.
headlines.
Okay.
New York State park named for transgender icon Marsha P. Johnson. Yes. A first for an LGBTQ person. A popular park in New York City has been renamed after this pioneering transgender woman of color, and she's the first to have a New York park named in her honor. Samara Wiley, Anthony Rapp, Cheyenne Jackson are among the cast for HBO's LGBTQ docuseries. It will be a 4-part series chronicling landmark events and the forgotten heroes of the LGBTQ community. So that should be good. All right. So those are my headlines.
All righty. So, Fair and Impartial Policing has been doing considerable work trying to bring about change within the police culture. Unfortunately, the statistics that came out from public safety last week are showing that if change is happening, it's happening very slowly. Looking at the overall data, and those of us who sit on the Fair and Impartial Policing Task Force got the complete breakdown. But the highlights are still people of color and people who are perceived as Asian are stopped more often than people who are white. They are searched more often without contraband being found. And this was the statistic that had actually shifted the least. People of color, when they are stopped, are ticketed at a much higher rate than people who are white. So, and to their credit, public safety said, these are not encouraging numbers. We have work to do. And even though overall the number of people of color and people who are perceived as Asian was less than on previous years, it was still higher than those people who are perceived as being white.
Not good enough.
So they're continuing to look at, okay, so what are the changes that need to happen? Part of it is diving into police culture, because in the absence of training and what's now being called experiential intelligence, your life experience, bringing it to law enforcement. If you don't have those experiences, what is it that can be created within the culture that would support those changes? Because in the absence of that, they revert to that paramilitary model and all of that profiling and stereotyping. So they are actively working on this, but we are not there yet.
No.
So the other thing that's happened is the ACLU in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont has filed suit because they're creating checkpoints that are nowhere near an international border and using it for, can you prove your immigration status, etc. Not okay. The governor is one of several governors that has filed suit about the census. And I keep talking about the census because it really does matter. And I do have an answer to Linda's questions about representation. What the current administration did is, remember I said, the remunerators, which are the people who actually go door to door, would be doing so until October 31st. So that trick-or-treater may actually be a census taker in disguise. So that those remunerators couldn't go out door to door and count the undocumented and new Americans. The census ends September 30th, a full 30 days earlier than what anyone had planned. So there was a formal complaint filed saying, no, you need to go back to October 31st. And looking at Vermont, we are doing better at getting numbers in, but we are still below 60% of registered voters, or what we think the target should be, having filled out the census. And to Linda's question, and then we will move on.
How many representatives?
This is how they determine out of those 435 representatives, and that's a static number. They look at how many people were counted in the census Then they look at your state and how many people were counted in your state. Your population is what percentage of the total population, and then your state is given that percentage of those 435 House seats.
But what if your percentage goes really high?
If
Can you make extra seats?
Yeah, well, no. It shifts. Because remember, it's not a percentage of the 435. The 435 is a static number. That does not change.
Really?
It's your state's percentage of the population.
Yeah.
So
we'll always have one?
Every state has at least one. But see, even if the population keeps increasing and your state's population increases, does the percentage value change?
Oh, okay.
And that's the determining factor.
All right.
Well,
Did you get that, Professor
That
Charles?
was very. I was always curious about that because
That-
I thought it was set by population. You know, like
Yeah, right.
if you had a certain number, then you would get 2 instead of 1. You know.
But it wasn't a certain number. It was a certain percentage of the total.
Okay.
So.
ready?
Yes.
Well, I'd like to now talk about a celebration that also plays a crucial role in allowing the most marginalized to have their day in the sun. These are some reasons to be cheerful. Black Pride in the UK celebrates its 15th year, quite possibly the most egalitarian and heartwarming protest I've ever witnessed. This is the writer of the article. It's a haven for LGBTQ people of color every year. Much like everything else, the program has gone digital this time round, with performances and talks all streamed online, but it's worth taking stock. What started in 2005 as a gathering of black lesbians in Southend that cost Phyllis Opuko Gayemba, and you'll see her on the clip I'm going to show you, 427 pounds, saw 10,000 people travel from all over the country to attend the event in London last year. Seeing queer refugees, asylum seekers, multiple voices, marginalized by sexuality, class, religion, and ethnicity take center stage and get their day in the sun is radical. True, it's really fun too, but unlike the main Pride, this one still feels political and with lots still at stake. Let's look at the clip.
People don't necessarily value Black lives, don't necessarily value or respect LGBT lives. So if you happen to be LGBT and a person of color or Black person, what does that mean for you in society? The genesis of UK Black Pride, it was born out of a need. It was born out of a desire for our people to come together, celebrate, challenge, and find themselves amongst themselves. My first Pride, which was a London Pride 16 years ago, it was exciting, but I also felt overwhelmed. I felt like I didn't see very many people who looked like me, who were celebrating me. So in 2004, we were seeing such a rise in the rhetoric and the hate that was being spouted out about, racism, sexism, and Islamophobia. And for our Black communities, we were like, we need to respond to this. The first UK Black Pride in 2005, we had about 200 plus people there in Southend, Shrewsbury Ness. Absolutely amazing, absolutely fantastic. And when we look at, we're in 2020, but our 2019 event had 10,000 people that were in attendance. And it was beautiful to see how much we have actually grown, because when you see growth in numbers, you also see strength. And when you look and stand on that stage and you see thousands and thousands of people in all their different colors and complexions and their outfits, you realize that something here has been created that is unstoppable. What inclusion really looks like in that space that has been created for LGBT people who may be non-binary, who may be trans, who may be, working class, who may be refugees, asylum seekers, migrants, so many differences and also beautiful nuances to what UK Black Pride is about. Negative responses we get about Black Pride, that there shouldn't be a Black Pride, that isn't this racist, that only Black people will come together to celebrate Pride? Isn't this separatist? How dare we do this? I think some of the negativity around Black, you say the word Black, and it comes with this distrust. It comes with a hate around it. We recognize that as Black people, we can't divorce ourselves from being queer, and we can't divorce ourselves from being Black or people of color, because there's the element of racism structurally and systemically that exists inside our LGBT plus community, but also outside that. If we lived in an ideal world, we would not need a pride, and we certainly wouldn't need a Black Pride. But we don't live in an ideal world because we're dealing with so many issues of the racism, the homophobia, the biphobia, the transphobia, which is ever so rife in our community. So until the day we have dismantled structures that have constantly oppressed us, we will need a Black Pride.
That's fun.
It's great.
Yeah. What a good speaker.
And she makes the point. We wouldn't have to have Black Pride in a perfect world where there was no racism and homophobia.
Mm-hmm.
On to you, Linda.
On to me. Oh, I thought you had two clips.
I do. I'm showing one in my next segment.
Oh, okay.
She's pacing herself.
That's right.
Okay. All right. I have, from mostly pro-equality platform in history, the convention, the first LGBTQ people to speak as keynote speakers. The 2020 Democratic National Convention marks a turning point for our community. We have fought for a seat at the table for generations, and it is at this convention there are more LGBTQ people will serve as delegates than any other party convention in history. Senator Tammy Baldwin, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, Danica Roem. Thank you. And State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta and Sam Park and Rupert Garcia will be present. Not only is there so much diversity from our community, but our future moving forward. So,
may I add now?
Yes.
If we recall the run-through of the states, at least one person said, "I'm here with my husband." I mean, several of the people reporting the delegate count from the states came out. And one person in the first night of the convention, that moving speaker, I learned this on Gay USA, the moving speaker who talked about her father's death.
Oh, that was wonderful.
She's a lesbian. And in the photographs that they showed behind her, one or two was of her and her same-sex wife, but you couldn't really see it. But that was very powerful speech, segment of the first night of the whole first night of the convention really knocked my socks off.
Yeah.
And there were other
it was amazing.
Stellar nights too.
Compared to the ones that are on now.
We won't even
Moving
go
on.
there.
Log cabin Republicans. The log cabin Republican chair says that LGBTQ Americans belong in the Republican Party. A spokesperson of the group says thanks in large part to the leadership of President Donald Trump. The party has delivered meaningful policy victories for gays and lesbians. I couldn't think of one, but, you know. You?
It's crazy.
I know.
All this rhetoric.
Right Wing launches a disgusting attack on pedophile gay lawmaker over equality legislation. An obscure bill for LGBT equality has made California Representative Scott Wiener the target of QAnon conspiracy theorists. Scott Wiener, a Democrat, has been targeted in what they believe is a pedophile conspiracy because Wiener introduced a bill he wanted LGBTQ pedophiles to be treated and have the same punishment as straight sex offenders. He is now receiving thousands of homophobic and anti-Semitic messages. So, more right-wing pundits are now saying that this is just disgusting, that Michelle Obama is a trans woman with a swinging you-know-what. Republican candidate and QAnon theorist Deanna Lorraine made these bizarre comments about Michelle Obama. She kept referring to the ex-First Lady as Big Mike.
Well, it's not just being transgender is not disgusting. You didn't mean to.
No.
that.
I meant that they're,
This whole slur is just
the
distasteful.
QAnon and the slurring and the disrespect for an ex-lady, and calling her Big Mike and saying,
It's
but,
awful, yeah.
Yeah.
You can't be a strong woman.
Right.
Pride banners incite furor in Utah town and are banned. Some residents in Heber City apparently found the Pride banners odd politically and disturbing. Now the city has approved limitations on what banners can be hung in the city-owned lights and street poles. So if you have a gay flag or anything, Black Lives Matter, you can't put it up. I suppose you could put it up in your own house, but you can't use any city property. Baseball broadcaster uses a gay slur and even botches his apology and gets suspended. The Cincinnati Reds took swift action against Tom Brenneman, who in a conversation described a place as one of those fag capitals of the world. And, I couldn't make heads or tails. I don't think anybody really knew, why he even said that or what city he was referring to, but it was unclear. But
it was a hot mic. He didn't realize. He didn't realize
Yeah.
he was on the mic.
And also,
The mic was live.
but they don't even know what he was referring to, like whether
Right.
he was talking to another broadcaster or whatever. So he was in the middle of making an apology, and then someone hit a home run. So he says, "Oh, it's a home run," and I'm really sorry about what I did. So that was pretty
You can see
interesting.
what's on his mind.
Yeah. And we've talked about the mayor in Holyoke, who he was accused of sleeping with students while he was teaching at college. He denies all these charges. Alex Moore and his opponent Richard Neal. Richard Neal is denying that he had any involvement on any part by his campaign to smear the mayor. Leaders of the college Democratic chapter at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, however, says they have evidence that Morse was involved. No Republican is running in the race, so the winner of the primary will win the seat. The mayor also says that he will not apologize for using dating sites like Grindr. All the sex that he's had with men has been consensual. So see how that turns out.
So it was a homophobic smear by his opponent.
Apparently he slept with students, but none of them were his. And apparently, you know, he uses dating sites and, you know, so all power to him, I guess. Gay NFL player Esira Tualailo opens up about head trauma in new podcast. The ex-NFL player says that he has lost 2 friends to head injuries. It's like one day they're here and the next minute they're gone. So that's my stories.
All right.
Keith.
Very quickly, Housing and Urban Development through September 22nd. This is their open comment time about their policy that shelters can deny shelter to people who identify as transgender, or they do not have to be placed according to their gender identity. What is critical here is that it's until September 22nd. If you write a letter just stating, this is why I think this is not a fair policy, they have to formally respond to each and every letter they receive. And they cannot move towards implementing this policy until all of those letters have been answered. But you can't use a form letter because that would be discounted. So legislature is back. Issues they're going to be dealing with are COVID, oh my, the budget, which we knew. They're also going to be looking at policing, so it'll be interesting to track how they respond to what public safety put out for data. When the interview with Becca Ballant, Becca said they knew that they had written policy quickly and that they would be coming back and reviewing it more carefully now. And August 25th is their first day in session. Finally, the primary, and this was the big news. Taylor Small, openly transgender candidate in Winooski, was the top vote getter in her district. She and Hal Coulson will be the 2 people running for that House seat. And if I'm looking at the Secretary of State site correctly, they are running unopposed. So Vermont is very likely on the verge of our first openly transgender member of our legislature.
Lovely.
This is national news.
Yes.
So moving on to you.
Okay. Let's talk about this new Nigerian lesbian film. I'm going to show you a clip, but first let me introduce it. 2 young women fill the screen, reclining on a bed, talking about their hope of having children. They are protagonists in a new Nigerian film called Ife, depicting their love story. The topic is controversial in Nigeria, where same-sex relationships are theoretically punishable by up to 14 years in prison. Producer Pamela Adi said Ife, which means love in the Yoruba language, widely spoken in southwest Nigeria, would be released online to avoid any possible move by censors to ban it. And you remember in Kenya all the trouble Rafiki had. I really feel that the Censors Board is playing a big part in stopping these kinds of stories from coming to the big screen. And it's just really stifling creativity, said Adi, who declined to provide a release date. A trailer released online in July shows the women discussing their love, and as one character phrased it, the fear of being forced to choose between your family and happiness. The role of film is not to say this is right or not. I think that the role of film and a filmmaker is to portray reality as it is, said Adi. Nobody has yet been convicted under the law banning same-sex relationships, which came into effect in 2014. But the case of 47 men charged last year with public displays of affection is being closely watched. I remember reporting on that. Many people in Nigeria are socially conservative, and some religious groups brand same-sex relationships as a corrupting Western import.
As if Christianity isn't?
Gay rights activists say the law has been used to extort bribes in exchange for not pursuing charges. Despite the fear that the law engenders, Uzomaka Anuwa, one of the actors, said Ife offers a glimpse into the everyday lives of people in same-sex relationships. I don't feel like it's bold, I feel like it's ordinary, she said. So now let's watch the clip.
I told my mom first. It took her about a week to come to terms with it, which is short for a Nigerian mother. Every day she asked me so many questions and I answered. She wanted to know what that meant, if I would have kids and all. And at the end of each day, she'd tell me how much she loved me.
She beat up boys in my class and anyone who dared bother me. She protected me. And my dad used to call her Gebewani.
Was it a long journey? How much bravery did you need when you came out to your mother?
I can't ask you to choose between your happiness and your family, because they mean the same thing to you, and I get that.
Is it too soon to say I might be in love with you?
We're lesbians. This is the perfect time.
I can't wait to see that.
It's groundbreaking.
I know. I think we should probably go to Keith and go to his trivia.
Out in the mountains, September 1988. Major change that year to Vermont's Pride Festival. What might that have been? We moved it to Montpelier. And the conversation at the time was perhaps Pride should have a different home each year. So there was LGBTQ visibility in all corners of Vermont.
So that would have been like Bennington and
Rutland,
sure.
St. Johnsbury, Newport,
out the
St.
big
Albans.
cities.
Not just
all
big
of the
cities.
cities?
Not just big cities, but maybe
White River Junction.
Bingo. You know,
Yeah.
a town that could support it.
So
What happened?
who decided that it
There
wasn't?
was an organizing committee that came together to organize the next festival
In 89, no.
in
90.
1990, and it went back to Burlington, and nobody ever pursued it.
You know, I wonder if it was the idea that students would, you know.
This was June,
this was still in June. When it
Okay.
got shifted to September, it was to encourage student participation. And at that point in time, it was already clearly established in Burlington.
I think there would be enough LGBTQ people
Oh,
in
sure.
the
I
state
mean,
of
we'd all
Vermont
come
without
all
the
around the
students,
state,
but
you know?
maybe not. I don't know.
Well, keep in mind that Bennington is doing a Pride Day, and they did it as a parade drive along. Rutland was looking at doing the same
White River
thing.
Junction was going to do something.
White River Junction
did
was
one
organizing.
last 2 years.
We did, you know, the Stonewall 50. We've done 2 events on our State House lawn, and they were looking at trying to do something up in the Northeast Kingdom. Mm-hmm. But, so
Well, we probably won't be able to do much of anything till next year at any rate.
there we are.
Okay, so I think that we are going to say goodnight with our usual resist, and then we're going to do a clip of Billy Porter and his night of singing at the Democratic Convention.
He closed out the first night
It was fabulous.
with this number, but the networks didn't show it.
Yep.
So we're showing it to you now.
So here is Billy Porter. And in the meantime, don't forget to resist.
What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there telling me I got to beware. Think it's time we stop. Children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Battle lines being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their mind, getting so much resistance from behind. We gotta stop. Children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. It starts